So guys, today we're talking, as you can see the studio being green, about the nuclear Armageddon that will come to the Middle East and to the world if this regional conflict continues to escalate. Not so positive, huh,
Heaven
Martin?
forbid, Yair.
Yeah.
There are threats and speech of.
According to foreign
sources.
reports,
Yes.
some sides in this conflict have nuclear powers.
There are
and
many
abilities.
headlines we can have today. Yeah. It's Armageddon time. Mm-hmm. It's the Third World War. It's the time where all the nukes come out. There's a lot going on right now in the Middle East.
Oh, definitely. It's like Israel just purchased a new tool for this war and for the IDF.
Allegedly.
Yeah. And a submarine, the best in the world so far, for us at least, that we know of, that can carry and fire nuclear weapons from the sea. Okay? Also, according to foreign reports, it can carry 4 nuclear bombs on it. And that means that even if we're struck by a nuclear bomb in Israel, which we were a very small country, I don't think it will leave much of us alive, we can retaliate by striking back.
Before we go into the details, let's put an asterisk. I'll say this to our audience. An asterisk at the bottom of everything we say today.
What's an asterisk? Let's start with that.
Asterisk is the little star that you have on the emoji sign on your keyboard.
Thank you, Martin.
And what it says is that everything we're saying today are things that are speculated and unknown.
Kochavit.
Kochavit, ken.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
asterisk kochavit.
Thanks.
Today's Hebrew word of the day is kochavit.
Yeah, so basically everything that we say today is like not officially reported by the Israeli government. And it's
but not just Israel. This is the name of the game in general when it comes to nuclear weaponry.
Definitely.
The name of the game is ambiguity.
Yeah.
We don't say, no one says exactly what they're planning to do. No one says exactly what they have in their arsenal. It's all threats and speculation.
Yeah.
And the reason is, and we'll go back to like the beginning of this, is we're talking today about the nuclear threat. The nuclear threat that's once again on the table from Israel's behalf, according to foreign press, from the Iranians, from the Russians, from many, many different sources.
From the Chinese, from the Americans, from everybody.
We're in this bizarre twist of events where suddenly we're talking, and it feels like it almost happened overnight, we're talking about what could be World War III. We're talking about what people who are Bible readers would call Armageddon.
Yeah.
We're talking what people are calling sort of the culmination of all the tensions of the Middle East. And nuclear is a component or a big component of that entire discussion.
Yeah, definitely. But, nuclear war is not good for anybody.
Yeah, I don't know why I don't know why we're smiling, but it's because this is not a very light conversation at all. But let's frame the backdrop to this conversation. And the backdrop is that tensions in the Middle East have never been higher.
Yes.
The backdrop is that Iran, for half of my lifetime, essentially, has been actively working to gaining nuclear capabilities.
Yes, and succeeding in some aspects.
And they've been making
developing
huge progress in the topic, and we discussed this in a previous podcast. And on top of that, the Russians are now involved, which we talked about several weeks ago. They carry a very substantial nuclear arsenal. The Chinese are involved.
Close to 6,000 nukes, according to what they say and declare that they have. Which is always it's part of the game.
When it comes to those numbers, though, it's just more than enough.
Yeah.
It doesn't really.
You need 2. You need 2, and then that's enough.
I'm going to kill you, but 1,000 times over. Well, you got me the first time. It doesn't make any difference. But anyway, so this is back on the table. The nuclear option for this conflict is back on the table. The discussion of the what ifs of nuclear warfare are back on the table. And the twist is, which is frightening and interesting and exciting, but also biblical on many, many levels. Biblical, by the way, not just based on our Bible, it's biblical also for the Quran. It's biblical on many, many levels. We're at this point where suddenly there are different nuclear players talking again about the use of it. The background to that is, for the first time in many, many years, Russia threatened to use, or made a vague threat, to use tactical nuclear weapons in the Ukraine.
That's a new name, tactical nuclear weapons.
Yeah, it is.
It means that it's basically a nuke, but for a very small area. Very small can be a military base, not necessarily an entire town or region, or something like that.
That's our nuclear jargon of the week.
Tactical nuclear abilities?
Tactical versus strategic. So we always talked in the past about strategic. Strategic is you drop a B-52 bomber or B, whatever it was, originally, drops a huge bomb and annihilates a city and the metropolitan
Hiroshima,
around it.
Nagasaki,
exactly.
We've seen it in the past.
But now there's discussion of doing it in a more accurate way. Also, it's important to note, and this is sort of in the weeds and the footnotes of this podcast, is that nuclear weapons are not the same today as they were in 1945.
No, definitely.
They're highly different, they're more powerful, but they also carry less radiation.
So they don't destroy the environment as much.
Yeah, you can use them. I mean, there are different types of bombs and different applications, but you can use it differently. And suddenly there's conversation of a application of nuclear that isn't an end-all move. Yeah. Because it always was the zero-sum game. Yeah. Well, if you use nuclear...
We destroy you completely, you destroy me completely, nobody wins.
Yeah.
So what's up?
So, and there was a name for it. It was called guaranteed mutual annihilation or something along those lines.
Sounds very friendly.
Something like that. Some fun term like that.
All right, Matti, let's say hi to our viewers, first of all. Welcome to TBN Israel, the podcast.
Hey, guys.
If you like what you see and want to receive videos from Israel on a daily basis, please consider subscribing and supporting what we do here and sharing our videos with anyone around the world that wants to know what is happening in Israel.
We'll give a spoiler to the end of today's show. Yes, it is concerning, and yes, it is scary, but there is hope. We'll leave that to the end of the show.
Since the start of this war, many people have been reaching out, asking how can we practically support Israel, take action, and some of them even asked me, which organizations should I support in this country that really do the work and not just, talk.
Well, today we have an option for them.
Yeah, definitely we do. And we're going to put some videos and actually show that this organization helped and is helping the Israelis, the Arabs, everybody in this conflict who needs help. Basically saving the lives of the wounded people in Israel.
So who are we talking about, Yair?
So we're talking about Magen David Adom. Okay, Magen David Adom is basically the Red Cross, but the Red Star of David.
Yeah.
Okay, this organization is combined with volunteers that go to the front lines. Mm-hmm. Let's give you an example. On the 7th of October, ambulances went to the border communities with the Gaza Strip to save lives in the Nova Party, in all the communities that were attacked. And Hamas terrorists launched missiles at these ambulances, and RPGs and missiles, and destroyed many of these ambulances. Okay? And many of the first responders were either wounded or hurt or not with us today anymore. Yeah. So this is an organization that needs your help. So if you like to support an organization that really saves lives in Israel, please consider making a financial donation to Magen David Adom. Matti, also this organization began to partner with us. So this program is sponsored by Magen David Adom. Okay? So we want to help them receive more funds so they can do better stuff in Israel, so they can have better gear to save lives, more ambulances, more training for their volunteers. Because this situation is not getting lighter, easier, or better, but we need people on the ground to help the citizens and everybody that needs help in this conflict. And we met personally with the founder, the CEO of this organization, and with the people that volunteer.
Yeah, and I want to say that we're very careful with the people we partner with.
Yeah.
And TBN is very careful with the people we partner with. These people are the real deal. Mm-hmm. They do the real work on the ground in Israel. It's a nonprofit. It's well vetted both on the financial side and the operational side. And I've met, and actually in the Army engaged quite a lot with them in recent reserves. Very high quality individuals, a huge community of volunteers that do God's work and the work of kind people who are saving lives in this country every single day, but all the more so during this time of war.
Yeah, definitely. And they don't care who they are saving. Yeah. There is a need, there is a call, they get there and they save their life.
Yeah, I think I feel very comfortable to say people should get behind this organization. Yeah. They should support them, should donate to them, especially now during the war, but also anytime in the future. So back to our topic. So we're talking about the nuclear option being on the table again. Mm-hmm. And this has been in discussion for a while, but it becomes, every time things heat up in this part of the world or in any part of the world, suddenly the headlines start getting filled up with this speak of the nuclear option, the nuclear capabilities, maybe this, maybe that.
If Iran and Hezbollah and all these proxies launch a massive ground attack or military operation or stuff like that against us, Israel always has the option of retaliating with a nuclear bomb, which gives us the basically ace up our sleeves to survive any attacks from bigger armies and from very big coalitions in this region.
Well, let's ask the big question. Does Israel have nuclear weapons?
Well, allegedly, yes. And I think that it's pretty clear that we have them, because if not, it would have been very hard for Israel to survive this.
I think it's one of two. I think we've had conversations about this in the past off camera. It's one of two things. It's or we do,
Or we're the best.
It is the best
player.
bluff in human history. And I think that's a very funny option, where it's possible, and I don't know, neither of us knows or can talk about the actual facts, but it is possible that Israel never had nuclear weapons, or maybe got them 30 years after they said they did, or people allege they did. And it was just an incredibly successful bluff for many, many years. And what it is so Israel has a policy called nuclear ambiguity. And what that means in layman's terms is that we never respond officially to the question of yes or no. The answer always is, we're not responding. No comment. Or I can neither confirm nor deny, as the Americans like to say. And that's always been the policy. But the backstory is again, this is all according to foreign press and much recent stories. This came out decades after it happened. According to what we know, is that in the late 50s, Israel set out on a mission to gain nuclear capabilities. Not civil, as the Iranians falsely claim today, but for nuclear applications. And
to survive in this region.
To survive in the region. Again, let's go back into the psyche of the young Jewish state. It's a country surrounded by fierce enemies, heavily equipped by the Russians, heavily sponsored by oil money, and we were a tiny, poor state from the 40s, 50s, 60s, and even in the 70s, who didn't have much in the ability to pour huge amounts of manpower, or equipment, or weaponry.
Or technology that we have today.
And we knew that people around us were trying to get the ability of a nuclear weapon, and we set on a mission to get it. The father, or the OG, the original gangsta of Israeli nuclear capabilities, is, among other people, Shimon Peres. Shimon Peres, who's the past president of the country, and many, many ministers, and even, was he prime minister for a very short amount of time? He was an interim prime minister after Yitzhak Rabin, the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin. And he was the father of many, many plans in this country.
And also, I think he was one of the, founders of Rafael, which is a military industry company in Israel, and other stuff that helped us survive this region.
So he goes on this mission to get us nuclear capabilities. And the stories they're crazy, they're creative, they're funny. At the same time, we or bought, or coerced, or stole, or a combination of all the above, the nuclear capabilities and plans to manufacture it. Till this day, it's not known exactly where we got all the information and how we were able to experiment.
It's said that maybe French scientists helped us out in the beginning, and other reports.
There are reports, and I'm saying this not from my knowledge, but from our producer giving us the notes in real time. There are notes that say that we stole it in part from the French. But again, it's back in the season where there was an embargo on Israel by the Arab League, and sometimes if countries wanted to sell us things and not take responsibility for it, they would want to have a backstory of they stole it from us, or
we will leave it in this area unguarded at this time. If you want to take it and leave us a bag.
There's that. This is very much a side note. There's the famous story of the how do you say it in English? The Cherbourg boats.
What?
Sfinot Cherbourg. The Cherbourg boats, Israel bought in the, someone's going to correct me in the notes later, and I accept it wholeheartedly. In the 50s or late 50s or early 60s, I forget, we had bought a bunch of surface vessels from the French, and then the French decided they were no longer supporting Israel on a military level. But we had already paid in full, and the boats were ready to deliver to the Israeli Navy, and we needed them. We really, really needed them.
Definitely.
And then we stole them from the French, because we already had naval units in France training on those vessels, because that's how it worked.
So we just told the captain,
and it was,
come home.
And again, now I'm going to say something offensive. It was yet another French holiday and day off, which seems to be a thing in France if you've ever visited. And somehow the Israeli Navy managed to steal boats, small boats, from the French and make it all the way to Israel with them.
Not bad.
And as a child, I remember hearing this story and saying, amazing, hooray to us. And as an adult, I think the French knew this was happening and allowed it. Like, you can't run away from a country with boats and not expect to be intercepted on the way. Anyway, all that to say is that we somehow got nuclear capabilities. We bought it, we stole it, we combined technology and use, both the knowledge and the materials from different countries. And there's these bizarre stories of the relationships. Like, we were tied into the South African apartheid regime, who also gained nuclear capabilities. And that's how we got enriched uranium. I forget all the details, but it's a lot of these.
Lots of stories that are not
lots of these
clear,
stories that we just don't know all the details of, even today.
Yeah, but bottom line, I mean, if our enemies think we have it, that's good enough. I mean, that does the work of a nuclear bomb. Because the purpose of nuclear bombs is to deter the other side.
Yeah.
I mean, to deter them from attacking us, because we have always the option of retaliating. Even if there is no more Israel, even if Israel is completely annihilated, we have the option of firing a nuclear bomb from our submarines, from the sea, and from other areas that potentially we have launchers. Because Israel has the ability to launch nuclear warheads, also again, according to foreign reports and unverified reports, from the ground, from the air, meaning from planes, and from the sea, meaning from submarines.
Yeah.
Okay, so that gives us all the options.
So we've never commented officially as a country.
Yeah.
But again, our intelligence organizations and government also know how to say things unofficially.
Yeah,
and we've been outed, so to speak, several times by other countries, including U.S. President Jimmy Carter, who publicly said Israel has nuclear weapons. Also, similar statements were made by the Iranians, who asked the question, why do they get to have nukes and we don't get to have them? They're our enemy, why do they have the fancy toy and we don't get to use the same thing?
Because you are a bad kid and you are not acting nice in this region.
Yeah.
I would say that's a good answer.
Yeah, but again, so we've never responded officially about the topic.
Yeah,
but several entities, including the U.S. government, have said over the years that Israel has nuclear capabilities. We're not signed on the anti-nuclear proliferation treaties. We've never commented officially on it, but what we know, according to foreign press, and again, at this point it seems sort of like established information, is that Israel has nuclear capabilities. Not one missile, not two like the North Koreans. We have in the many dozens.
Yeah, potentially 90 according to my producer here.
Yeah, and possibly in the hundreds, and they're on different payloads. Yeah. They can be delivered by the Arad, for instance, surface-to-surface missile, or by air-to-ground missiles, or by water, as in naval or submarine cruise missiles onto land assets.
Yeah.
So we have multiple capabilities, and the important one, as you mentioned, is a second wave capability.
Definitely.
Which essentially says, and this is sort of going back to like 50s and 60s Cold War doctrine, which the whole idea of nuclear capabilities back then, it's sort of transitioned today, is to say, you can never finish me. Like there's no scenario in the world at this point, and this was the US and the Soviet Union back in the day, where whatever you do, however you do it, however much of a first strike and surprise attack you get on us, whatever happens, you're dead.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like the mindset behind like nuclear capabilities.
And if everybody's dead, then nobody wants to attack.
Yeah.
Makes sense, I guess.
The problem with that, of course, is that it takes into account or expectation the assumption that both sides are rational thinkers.
Yeah, which we see now that many sides, especially in this war against Israel, are not rational.
Yeah,
and as you always say, they are even death cults.
Yeah.
So let's say Hamas, Sinwar, this leader, he doesn't care if he'll die. I mean, I'm sure that he knows that Israel will get him, and he still committed the atrocity of the 7th of October.
Yeah, and you see the people who are the proponents of radical Islam, they embrace death. They say it openly, and they take action based on that ideology.
And they do exactly what they say.
So when suddenly a player, and this is the big concern with Iran,
definitely,
when a player says, I'm going to get nuclear capabilities, and Iran's dogma, Iran's ideology, Iran's practice and modus operandi is to spread their weaponry and their technology and their warfare capabilities throughout the region through proxies who are much less responsible players than the Iranians are because they have less to lose. They're terrorist organizations or semi-terrorist, semi-state organizations.
They can easily deliver the weapon to Hezbollah or to other terrorist organizations like Hamas and say, okay, it wasn't us, don't attack us, it's this terrorist organization in the Gaza Strip. And then what? The idea, like the IDF or any other military will launch a nuclear bomb on Gaza, or they won't, because it's a terrorist organization. It doesn't represent a state. And here you have a very, very difficult situation.
Yes.
We have no one to blame. And then this is what makes our situation now different from the Cold War time, where you had, Russia versus the United States, the Soviet Union. You had sides. You knew who to blame. And now with this situation of terrorists, you have, oh, it's not me, it's this terrorist organization. I'm not responsible for them. And also Hamas is doing that, just as an example, in the Gaza Strip. oh, I don't have the hostages.
It's not me.
It's this little terrorist organization of a different Palestinian group, but it's
my
not
crazy
me.
cousin.
Yeah.
Muhammad, it's him. I don't know anything about this.
Yeah, it's not. They don't have them with me. I don't know where they are, but I can give you other stuff if you want to negotiate with me.
Yeah. Here's like the government term of the week.
Yeah.
Plausible deniability. The Americans like to say this.
Yeah.
We can always say we knew nothing about this. I don't know who you are. I've never seen you before. As far as I'm concerned, I never did this.
Yeah, this little terrorist group that until yesterday had, made guns that they made in home and threw rocks. They suddenly have a nuclear bomb. I mean, it's not me. I didn't deliver it to them.
Yeah. So let's go back for two steps.
Them.
So we've established Israel, according to foreign press, has a substantial amount of nuclear weapons, and we have the ability to deliver those weapons. Some of them are big, some of them are small, same as other countries. And that for many decades has been a deterrent to our neighbors. They know that if sort of the end comes, or the war comes to a point where we're sort of on our last stand, we always have the ability to bring annihilation, death, and violence to them in a way that they won't be able to recover from.
Definitely.
And here's where Iran comes into the picture. The Iranians have been working for over 20 years, and possibly much longer. We just don't know the exact details.
Yeah, definitely.
And before them, the Iraqis did the same, and the Syrians after them did the same.
Yep.
They were all working very hard and investing substantial resources to make a point of taking away Israel's edge in the nuclear capability arena.
That's not good for us, definitely.
It's very bad for us.
And for everybody in this world.
Exactly. And what that means is the minute they have that, the minute one of these countries has those capabilities, we no longer have a deal-breaker weapon.
Yeah.
And it's big. That's a big statement. And it's concerning, and it's cause for concern for not just Israel, but everyone in the region.
No, definitely. So let's say all of the Middle East will attack Israel. Yeah. And we know something like that will happen in the end times, if you believe in the Bible, and I do. And in a case that Israel is about to lose that war, we always have the option of a nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
But once this option is off the table, meaning the other side has it as well, so we cannot use it also because it will be basically suicide for both sides. Then it's a war between guns, tanks, airplanes. It becomes tactical, it becomes conventional once more. And in this war, Israel is very tiny and small, and we need our allies, and we need to keep our technological edge. Yeah. So in this case, this is why it's so important to invest in military, which is conventional, as well as non-conventional, which is the nuclear arsenal. So we always need to keep advancing. Let's say this submarine that we see here was, I think, the biggest military thing that we bought in recent years.
It's the most expensive toy Israel's ever bought as a nation.
Yeah, and why do we invest in new weaponry? Also, it's a statement, and in practice, we have the ability. So you see, it's not that clear. We could have purchased this quietly. I mean, it's a submarine. We could have purchased it quietly. But everybody's talking about it.
We want people to know.
Yeah, we want them
why
to
wouldn't,
know
why wouldn't we want them
advance?
To know? Here, let's talk about the what ifs for a second. And I think this is something that's always worth delaying on, looking at the example. People outside of the world will say, well, what is the worst thing that would happen if the Iranians have a nuclear bomb? They, and if you sort of equate Israel to the Iranians, or Israel to any country in this region, well, the difference is Israel is a democracy. It upholds life. And it's a rational country, honestly, for good and for bad. We're a rational country. Here's the example of what happens when someone who's irrational gets nuclear weapons. The example is not the Soviet Union or modern-day Russia. The example is North Korea. North Korea has rudimentary nuclear capabilities according to what we know.
Another world. What's the rudimentary?
Basic. It's let's call it entry-level nuclear capabilities. What they have is the ability to launch maybe a handful of intercontinental ballistic missiles or short-range, not very efficient ballistic missiles, but it's a threat to any one of their neighbors, including Japan, and including possibly U.S. military assets, definitely in South Korea for sure. But also in the region. And what happens when so think about this country, dictatorial regime. They've starved their people. They had, and people don't know this. People think, the Middle East is the worst place in the world to live in. Look
to the east. Look to Africa.
But look at Asia had in North Korea in a time of global prosperity and global economic growth. North Korean people were dying in the millions of starvation after the fall of the former Soviet Union. And they did that because they live under a corrupt and violent regime that has left them, so far behind the rest of the world that they're completely detached from the reality we live in.
Yeah.
And the reason they're untouchable to the world's armies and population and aid organizations, the reason is our nuclear capabilities. People are not afraid of their army per se as far as like an invasion, aside from probably South Korea, who has reason to be concerned. But now they have nuclear capabilities. And when they have those, they can do things that are insane. And they, not only that, they have so much clout on the global arena now that and think about this, it's a country that has a non-existent economy, no geopolitical power, no, assets that are worth
But they have nuclear bombs.
They got the US president under Trump to personally engage in negotiations with them. That's how much power nuclear weapons give you. So that's not even the worst case scenario. That's just to show what an equalizer having those capabilities is, and why Israel has been so bent on preventing the Iranians from having that capability. Because the minute they do, they're already, I don't want to say untouchable, they're already a strong player. They're already well funded. They're already backed by the Chinese. They already have oil. They already have a strong and intelligent people.
They already have Russian military technologies.
And then add to that the ability for them to be almost untouchable on a military level without bringing destruction to their enemies or the enemy or the friends of their enemies. And then it becomes a very problematic conversation.
Let me escalate the situation a bit more. Okay, once the Iranians receive a nuclear weapon, the Saudis want one also.
Yes.
Why should they not have military weapons as well?
Yeah.
And then more people will want it. And then you become a nuclear world.
Well,
everybody has it.
You mentioned,
And you need one bomb to go off, and then everything falls apart.
Yes.
Everything.
Yeah. And there's two really interesting things here. The way it's worked in the past, sort of at the back end of the Cold War, and then what happened after the fall of the USSR, is that most countries who are reasonable in the way they look at the world said, having nuclear weapons sort of spread through these countries that are sort of semi-functioning is a bad idea. Let's take active measures to disarm some of the nuclear capabilities, especially from countries that are or falling apart or their economies are failing or they're very young and establishing themselves as a country. The former Soviet Union did that. They took their nuclear weapons back from some of the countries that disengaged from them after the fall of the USSR. And the US did the same thing. They reduced drastically the number of their nuclear warheads in a treaty with the Russians. There are many countries around the world that have nuclear capabilities.
The British from what? From 20,000 to 6,000?
But again, the main point is not that the number specifically matters. It's to reduce the spread of the availability of nuclear weapons. So a submarine doesn't go missing. So a ship doesn't go missing. So
if you have a rogue captain that went crazy or has nothing to live for when he can,
or a rogue country, or a country that has a coup and the next day has nuclear bases that are suddenly under someone who is is deranged. So many countries understood the concern of that. And here's where things really changed in recent decades. The discussion always was, and we opened with this, it's a zero-sum game. It's or death and destruction to all or nothing. But now there's a middle option. And Putin presented that middle option last year in the Ukraine.
Tactical nuclear weapons.
Exactly. And he says, we don't have to destroy the entire country. We might, maybe, perhaps, perchance, maybe we'll lose a little missile and suddenly what we call a tactical nuclear warhead. So it causes regional damage, but it's not the level of radiation and destruction that makes an entire city or region disappear.
For 20 years.
Yeah, it's not that. But it is enough of a statement to bring a country to its knees. And that's suddenly on the table. And people have been changing the way they talk about it. And suddenly, and I said this also from Israel's perspective, it's not an all or nothing. Like there is a possibility that if the Iranians get a nuclear warhead, they're not going to destroy all of Israel. Because then they expect sort of to have the same done to them, the same gift returned to them. But what if it's only tactical? What if they set off a nuke in the Israeli desert?
Yeah.
What if they set it up in the Golan? And it kills in the thousands, which is terrible, but it's not a destruction of a country. And like you said, you don't know officially who launched it. It just happened.
And then Israel cannot officially retaliate against Iran. And the world, as we see now with the 7th of October, even retaliating against a terrorist organization that kidnapped our people is very hard and unacceptable according to the international community.
Yeah.
So retaliating against a country for a bomb that nobody knows for sure where it came from will not be acceptable.
Yeah.
And this puts us again in a very, very bad situation as Israel in this region, staying here alone without any support from the world.
Yeah. And again, you allude to the vagueness of it. That's the big challenge we're facing today, is that the Iranians, for the most part, and other countries in this region, we don't, it's not the same way as it was in the, the Middle Ages, where the king declares, we're going to war against so-and-so. I thus declare war. They wave the flag and charge.
Exactly.
You sometimes don't know who's attacking you. And even if you do, there's no official proof of it. And then, for instance, we don't know for sure that the Iranians don't have some kind of nuclear capability.
Personally, I think that they might have. I mean, it's not off the table that they have a few, that they are kept in some places. And then, they will not reveal the fact that they have 2 bombs because it doesn't seem
they
so
would,
strong.
They would unofficially. They would allude to it. They wouldn't tell you directly. And you remember, I don't know if you remember this, a couple of years back, there was a whole discussion of like the North Koreans are possibly trading with the Iranians. I honestly don't remember what came of that whole discussion, but there was a discussion about it. And they said, maybe they're going to sell them, maybe they're going to give them the capability.
Well, the Iranians and North Koreans are partnering in a lot of things, like digging tunnels in Hezbollah, in the Lebanon border with Israel. So why not be partnering with these levels as well?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And so maybe they do. Maybe they're bluffing and saying that they do. We don't really know, and that's what makes it so scary.
But more than just having the bomb capability, you need to have the capability to launch the bomb with a missile that will reach the target. And that's like another layer of the nuclear watchdog that they want to make sure that Iran does not develop also the means of sending and delivering these weapons.
No, but they have that. They have.
That for sure, they have a very... They proved it on April, launching all these missiles towards us.
No, they know how to launch missiles.
Yeah.
They know how to deliver substantial payloads to a great distance, well beyond the borders of Israel, by the way.
Yes.
They have very substantial, let's call it payload delivery capabilities. Intercontinental ballistic missiles, drones, less in the fighter jet area. They have surface ships that are able to do such things. So they have that capability. And all it takes is, I wouldn't say it's one nuclear warhead, but several nuclear warheads for them to be a force that we would now have a problem dealing with.
Yeah.
This is a good opportunity to tell our viewers that this show is sponsored by Artza. And Artza are the answer to the question of how can you actively support people here in Israel? And I'll explain that statement. People throughout the war and in general ask the question of like, who really needs support? Who can I really help? How can I really change something on the ground in this country? And the answer to that is you can subscribe to Artza, because Artza works only with local small businesses who create unique products directly from Israel that come all the way to your homes. High quality, hand-picked gifts for you and your family. So make sure to check out the link that's below and make a subscription today to Artza.
Yeah, definitely, Mati. And Artza is also a way to help the small businesses in Israel during this war. The economical side of this war has vast implications on people that have businesses in this country. It's very hard. And if you do that, you can also type a code called TBNIL, and you'll get an extra 10% discount on artzabox.com. That's their website. So that's the way you helping us, because you get there through this podcast. So that's good for us in the relationship with Artza, and we can deliver more videos like this one. Okay, so we want to do this on a daily basis, and we need to pay, all this crew and the team.
Pay our producers, incredibly expensive.
A lot of makeup artists to make Mati look good. It's very hard.
Half good.
So no, I'm joking, but really, if you want to help us, this is a way, and also you get something for it. You get a piece of Israel. You can give gifts.
Yeah,
it's really quality
and it's
stuff.
something tangible. People want something they can touch and connect to that's connected to this land, and here you're getting the trifecta. Definitely. You get to bless this country in a time of war. You get to touch the businesses on the ground here. It's not some big company where it's completely impersonal. It's the people in Israel throughout this country who are making things with their own hands, and you get to bless this country and have something to show for it. So let's frame the conversation again. We live in a world today where much of the superpowers of the world, to sort of be part of the elite club, call it a G8 of like the nuclear powers, you have to have nuclear capabilities. And many countries do. The Americans have it. It's been known for decades. The Russians have it. The Chinese have it. The Saudis want it from the Americans or want mutual assurance from the Americans.
Yeah, as part of a regional agreement or relations with Israel and stuff like that. So nobody's doing anything for free.
Yeah, and then many other countries that we would not consider to be the most stable also have nuclear capabilities. And as I was like reading up and listening to podcasts and YouTube videos as I do on this topic, I realized that there have been many, many conflicts around the world where countries who both of them had nuclear capabilities, or one of them went to full-on war and chose not to use any of the weapons or even discuss the option.
Yeah.
A great example is India and Pakistan. India and Pakistan are countries that are not shy to exchange blows. And that is an understatement.
For many years.
That is an understatement. India and China. India and China, I don't know, you said this, and I love the visual of it. When you can't use the nuclear weapons, you go back to sort of hand-to-hand combat. Do you remember, like, what was it, like a year or two ago, the Chinese and the Indians were fighting in the, am I mixing up the story? No, it's the Chinese and the Indians in the Himalayas.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't remember.
They have a border dispute. And again, these are two superpowers that have enormous armies and air forces.
And how did they fight?
Space, and they fought in hand-to-hand combat.
Really?
Yeah. I'll show you cool. This is not videos for this show.
This is like going back like to the, I don't know, to movies like Achilles, that you choose your best warrior and then you choose your best warrior and let's fight.
And literally it's
one-on-one.
It's mountain warfare units that were, I think in some of the cases they didn't even shoot, they were stabbing and fighting in the hills and the mountains over there.
Really?
And both of them are nuclear superpowers.
Well, that sounds pretty cool. I want to see.
But you think about like how bizarre and how powerful of an impact this has is if both countries have nuclear capabilities and both countries have powerful air forces and artillery and missiles, it almost doesn't make sense to use them anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Because the damage is so big on both sides, so you just go back to the basics.
Yeah.
It's weird.
And it's like a twisted way to look at the world, but it's the world we're living in. And again, these are reasonable countries, reasonable in the sense of they say, we'd rather not lose 1 million civilians of our population.
Yeah, yeah.
But the Iranians might not have the same mindset.
Oh, definitely. Let me take you now to the situation here in Israel. Okay, so Israel is at war for more than 8 months with Hamas, with Hezbollah, and the whole world is focusing on this war, on the Israeli tanks maneuvering in Gaza, about Hamas terrorists holding the Israeli hostages, about the northern border being evacuated from tens of thousands of Israelis, and about Hezbollah launching missiles against Israel, Israel launching missiles against Hezbollah.
Yes.
Many Lebanese people are away from their houses as well. And nobody is focused about this nuclear issue.
Yeah.
Nobody is looking at Iran now. And Iran, for itself, this is the best time for them to develop the nuclear arsenal, nuclear weapons. Because nobody cares. Everybody is focused on this conflict here. And I think that might be one of Iran's strategic for the long run.
Yeah.
To keep this conflict going, to keep the world focused on this conflict so they can develop their doomsday weapon.
And they've been doing everything they can to do it. And I would imagine, and I say this without having any specific knowledge about it, that there's a lot of back-channel communication happening. Because if you think about it, if the Russians wanted the Iranians to have nuclear weapons, they would already have them.
Yeah.
And if the Chinese wanted the Iranians or Hezbollah or Hamas to have them, they would already have them.
Listen, I don't think that the Chinese or the Russians trust the Iranians to that level. So they still want to have the ability, to have better weapons and to have an edge over the Iranians as well.
Yeah.
Why would they give them the nuclear weapons?
Well, because they wouldn't. Because it gives them power over them.
Yeah.
And I think that's
puts them kind of at the same level.
In a perverse way of using the word, it's the beauty of having nuclear capabilities, is that it puts you in a league of countries and players that can speak at a higher level than other countries.
Yeah.
Because suddenly you can have a peaceful conversation when you have a huge bat, like hidden behind your back.
Definitely.
When you have to fight almost to the death to be able to make your point, you're going to think twice about doing it. But if you have the ability to bring destruction to your enemy, or your enemy is
with a press of a button,
then it allows you to have a conversation that comes from a position of power and influence that is way beyond your size or the depth of your pockets. Russia's had that in the Middle East because of that. They have the ability to speak like this. We have down. We have the ability to do 1, 2, 3, 4.
And they use it all the time.
Yes.
Definitely with the United States and with smaller countries surrounding Russia.
Yeah, and they make threats because, again, Russia, and we're not talking about Russia today, but they're an economy that's been shrinking. They're a population that's been shrinking. They're a government that's been on the track for instability, not stability and strength. And they've been doing everything they can to project power, and we've talked about this previously. But what they also have the ability to do is every time someone starts saying something along the lines of, we should pay less attention to what the Kremlin has to say, we should pay less attention to what Putin is trying to do. Then
they put themselves back in the headlines.
Then suddenly you hear and track the news. They'll say something very vague. Hey guys, we feel like we're being destabilized to the point where suddenly we're not sure we can protect our agenda. We might have to think about using the last option.
Or backing out of the destabilizing treaties and all that.
They make this very vague threat of, we might have to use this weapon. And suddenly the whole conversation goes back to, no, we respect you, Russia. We value you. You're
such a key player in the world.
It's a very powerful weapon. The same goes to the Israelis. What's interesting when we talk about, and we do a lot of talking about, let's call it regional dynamics, is the Saudis envy the Israelis for our nuclear capabilities. Why? Because if they're, and for people who are listening, I'm putting my hand up high, they're a top dog in the region, a top dog in the Muslim world, in the financial world.
Oil,
yes, on many levels.
Influence. They're also a country that is led by a dynasty of kings, and they have their pride, and they want to protect this prestigious.
And when they say to the Americans, look, we're having a discussion about how we play together in this part of the world, they're concerned about the Iranians getting a nuclear weapon just as much as we are, or even more.
I think more, because this is a spiritual war. And in Islam, you have an ongoing religious war between Sunni and Shiite. And Saudi Arabia are the leaders of the Sunni world, while Iran are the leaders of the Shia world. So, I mean, after the Sunnis and Shias plan to destroy Israel, they're going to go after each other.
Planning to destroy each other.
The good thing is they won't succeed, so in the meanwhile, they'll still kill each other for centuries.
You mentioned...
Unalive.
Yeah, we don't want to get demonetized on YouTube. So here's a big question. Many people who read the Bible, they hear the spiritual backdrop to this. And, everything that comes to mind is every time we hear Hezbollah, every time we hear a northern threat, what comes to mind? Armageddon is coming.
Is this the end of the world now?
Is this the end?
Can I come to Israel or not?
Is this the last battle? Is this Armageddon? Is this, the end time that we've been talking about? And I don't know to answer that.
Definitely not. Yeah. Listen, I don't know to answer that. And because we've seen wars, like I'm sure that believers back in the 6 Day War and in the Independence War and in all wars thought that this might be the end. Where 6 different countries attack you from all sides and you have basically a few weapons and no technologies, and you win. It might be another situation like this, that God needs to remind us and everybody that He's in control of this region, and He's the one that's protecting Israel against all these enemies, against all these threats, against the situation that we do not see an answer for. We don't have a solution, not for Gaza, not for Hezbollah, and not for Iran. I mean, I don't have a solution. Do you have any idea of how we can solve this situation?
I don't think I'm supposed to have a solution. I'll tell you why, because I think if the solution to your problem is clear and it's 1 step or 2 steps away that you can imagine, no faith is required.
Definitely.
That's my mindset. And I've learned, and it took me a while, but I've learned to live at peace with the fact that I don't know how things are going to work out. All I know is that God has been faithful and that God is sovereign. And I rest my case there. I say, is this the battle that we read about in Revelation? Is this the battle that the prophets of Israel spoke about? I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no, maybe both. Maybe it's part of it. It's this chapter, but not that chapter.
Maybe it's the first move of the piece on the chessboard. But one thing that I like, Mati, is to take, because people like to talk and focus about when is the Armageddon coming? Are these the end times or not? Just think about it. This is how I understand the situation. It's like, what does it matter for me personally? Okay. What's the difference?
What's the takeaway?
What's the difference? Let's say, okay, so it is the end times. Does it mean I need to act differently on my day-to-day basis? Do I need to speak differently to my fellow people around me? Do I need to act differently with my family, in my job, be a different light to the people that I speak with here in this region? No, it's the same. And also, let's say it's not the end times, but I'm going to walk in the street now and get hit by a car. Boom, I'm fast forward to the end times. What's the difference? We need to be ready every second in our lives. That's how I resolve this situation.
Here's the way I look at it. This is not my saying. Many wise men have said this over the years. Mm-hmm. You live your life like Yeshua, Jesus is coming tomorrow.
Exactly.
And you build the church, not the building, not the non-profit organization, church in the community, the ecclesia, the version of it. You build it in the community sense of it as if Yeshua, Jesus is coming in 100 years. And that's the way you're supposed to look at the world. Mm-hmm. And many men have said this over the years, and women, from different angles. But it's always you live your life as if this is the last day, so every day counts. Mm-hmm. But you build as if it's 100 years away. Yeah. And I think that's the right mindset to be in. You can have a hope for the future, and at the same time, also be concerned about taking care of today.
Definitely.
And I think the right way to go about it is, yes, if there's a need for emergency and action, like there is today and has been yesterday and will be tomorrow, to respond to Iran and to protect our families and to get everything in order.
And to invest and plan and prepare for the future and prepare for bad times, prepare for better times.
Yeah, you need to take those actions immediately. Mm-hmm. But in the long term, you don't want to live, because if you don't have the long term and if you don't have the big picture,
you have no reason to wake up.
You have no, and you have no faith and you have no hope. Because our hope is that there is a future, and you build towards that. And that's how you rely on God's promise. That's how you rely on the knowledge that good things are coming. And we never said it was going to be easy. And God never said that either.
The opposite, I think.
He said the exact opposite. He says always
hard times are coming,
Hard times are coming. Everything worthwhile requires fighting for and requires sacrifice. Mm-hmm. And that's a reality we're in. Yeah. We're in a reality, as always, I should say, in this part of the world, and anywhere, where things are scary, where things generate doubt in our hearts and our minds, where things spark fear in the hearts of man. And at the same time, we need to have faith that despite the fact that we're today concerned, fearful, worried about how we're going to deal with today, that in the future, God is going to come through on his plan to the dot in the letter.
And again, that's why this region, Israel, is important for everyone around the world, because it is an example that we as humans can see, can look, can feel. Okay, this is a situation that this tiny country with 10 million people is constantly under attack, under threats. And they don't know if tomorrow will be attacked by, 250 missiles and drones again, or a nuclear weapon, or another terrorist attack. So we need to plan like if today might be our last day. Yeah. But as you said, we need to plan also for the future. We need to be optimistic. And Israel is a good example to that. And it is not only related to Israel, because if you compare it to your own life and to our viewers' lives, all of us have a challenge in our life. Yeah. And we can always go into despair and think, I have no future, I'm stuck in this situation and in that situation. But if you have faith, you know that God will never give you something that is too big for you to handle.
I'll tell you where the challenge lies. The challenge lies is that oftentimes you're able to take more than you think you can take. You know what I mean?
What? Again?
We always say God will never try us in more than what we're able to deal with.
Yes.
But we're able to deal with more than we think we're able to deal with.
I see what you mean. You know what I mean? It's not what we think; it's what we can actually do.
It's what you can actually do, and you're always stretched. Yeah.
So I think that's a good time to kind of sum everything up.
Yeah.
Okay. So allegedly, Israel has nuclear weapons. Iran potentially has a few. They want to have more. And the danger in this situation is that a nuke will go to a third party that is not a country, not rational, that doesn't care about life, that doesn't care about the total annihilation of this world. And these are the people that we are fighting against. This is what Hamas is saying. This is on their charter. They're praising the suicide bomber that they send off. So imagine this suicide bomber with the ability to press a button and kill tens, hundreds of thousands of people. This is the threat. And moreover, if a terrorist group is firing a weapon at us, we cannot respond against Iran or a nation because we don't know if they did it. It's not politically correctness according to the eye of the world. This is the dilemma.
And yet, and thankfully there isn't and yet or a but. Yeah. But our country had very wise and insightful and forward-thinking leaders in the past, and hopefully also in the present, who gave us capabilities to protect ourselves and did things that were considered to be impossible in the past. And yet today we get to sit here safely and comfortably, relatively speaking, knowing that we can sort of rely on the safety that that gave us. And it's almost a reverse mindset where the fact that we're able to unleash violence on our enemies gives us the ability to choose peace and gives us the ability to live in peace. And I think we also hit on something important on an emotional level, is that this whole nuclear conversation can go one of two ways. You can use it as a tool to be escapist, to try to fear the today and to fear the tomorrow, or you can use it to find peace and hope in what will come, and know that even that today is in tension, that tomorrow is going to bring us the future that we believe in.
Yeah, definitely. And also, guys, if you have any doubts and hard times in your life, just look at Israel. Look at the day-to-day hardships of Israel and how God has been faithful to this tiny country year for 75 years, and before that from biblical times, and the people of Israel are still here. So if God is faithful to Israel, He's faithful to each and every one of you. Mati, and that's the whole point. That's the whole significance of Israel. We're not special. The people of Israel are definitely not godly.
Oh, we are special. We're incredibly problematic as a people.
No, God chose, I think, one of the most problematic nations and people in the world to prove that even to these stubborn and annoying people, He is faithful to His word.
We're chosen not because, but despite.
Yeah, exactly. Like if He's faithful to these annoying people, us, He is faithful to each and every one of you back at home. Okay, so
that's all we have for today. It's been interesting. We talked about nuclear. We talked about the fear of the nuclear plans, and we talked about God's faithfulness in that.
And we did that laughing most of the show, I think.
Yeah, we need to visit a professional, I think. Both of us.
It was a great show. And guys, if you'd like to receive more videos like this one, please consider subscribing to TBN Israel on our YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org.